All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast, episode 256. It is September 29th. I don't know about you, but it's the second to last day of the quarter for me. So I'm on edge. I'm drinking coffee. I'm updating DocuSign every 32 seconds. I'm a stress ball. So we're going to keep the intro short and sweet today. Super pumped for a great conversation with Ryan New. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Vendr, which is a new platform, relatively new, for helping SaaS companies, sell and buy their solutions together and create some more efficiency in the market. Formerly, he was running enterprise sales at InVision. Formerly, he was, really cut his teeth in sales at HubSpot for almost 6 years, coming from entry-level sales to up to the director of sales, ton of promotions in between. He was at KPMG before that. Started a few different companies that didn't pan out before Vendr and before getting into sales. And we talk about his whole journey. So we talk about what it was like to transition from a big four accounting firm to the world of sales, talk about his come up at HubSpot, getting promoted, starting a company, what he's seeing in the B2B sales space. It's a great conversation. I personally got fired up talking to Ryan, super inspired by his story. And as someone who wants to run a business someday, is definitely inspired by what he has to say in the mission that he's on. So definitely give him some love. Before we get to the episode, let's do a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Postal.io. Postal creates more meaningful marketing experiences. So it helps you to create a better connection with your customers and prospects, right? Sending gifts to prospects or customers, right? Instead of like a Starbucks gift card, you can send something from the local brewery or the florist on the street corner, whatever it might be, to help create that bond, make it more personable, make a deeper connection. In this world where I'm not taking clients to steak dinners or coffees or drinks on the last week of the quarter, it's a really great way to break the ice and break the mold and try to kind of shake things up and build a relationship and try to make them feel special. And I think that's a huge part of sales is how do you differentiate yourself? How do you build trust? How do you build a relationship? And this is one tool in your toolkit. So give them some love at Postal.io. Otherwise, you can feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. Tom Alemo. I'm Tommy Tahoe on all other social media. Let's get into my conversation with Ryan New. Let's go. All right, hailing from Boston, Mass, Ryan New, CEO of Vendr. Good morning and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to, not a Boston native, but always good to talk to someone that's living out in New England, in my old stomping grounds, out in South Boston.
Absolutely. I'm a native, born in Michigan, raised in Ohio, but I've been here since 2007. Still root for the Browns, but go to the occasional Red Sox game.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that about the Browns. But Boston's got kind of like, I feel like a growing tech scene coming up. Just a lot of like budding startups that I'm starting to see populate there. I think it's been big for like the medical and bio tech for a while, but I'm starting to see more SaaS build up there.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time at HubSpot, and early days, they were always like, we want to do like the PayPal Mafia. We want that to be the HubSpot Mafia one day. And I think it's actually starting to happen, which is really cool. And we're excited to be a part of that. And then, yeah, a lot of other great ones. And it's not just B2B SaaS. You've got like the HubSpots, the Klavios, the Drifts, the Salsifys, but then it's also like the B2Cs. You got DraftKings and Wayfair. And so it is definitely starting to become a booming destination for technology companies.
I love it. So let's get to you and your career a little bit. So I know you came out of school going straight into the KPMG, the big four accounting world. Walk me through like where was your head at that time, like in college, deciding to go there. And obviously you've made some pretty drastic changes since then, but where were you at in the college days?
Oh, you know what? I think I don't know is the short answer, because I ended up in accounting, and not to disparage the industry, it's just, it wasn't for me. And I remember, so I went to college at Charleston, and I actually spent my freshman year at University of Delaware. then I transferred to College of Charleston. I think I was just all over the place. And when looking at the curriculum, I just remember I had to take like an oceanography class in college. Like, what the heck am I doing? And my major was accounting, and that came from my dad was an accountant, and he was also a really good accountant. He loved it, and like he's like Rain Man. He just sees the numbers, and for me, I don't. And so I remember his advice was always just leave college hopefully with a skill set. And just one idea, accounting might be a good skill set because you get to learn the balance sheet. You've got a lot of great jobs out there, so you'll probably be able to land a job. But so I did it. That's what I pursued. But throughout college, I just remember being like, this is not what I'm interested in. And I'm not interested and I'm not good at it. But I didn't really know what else was out there. Like at least at the time, there weren't any sales courses there. It was just like you just graduate with like a general business degree, liberal arts degree, or in my case, accounting. And then like day one, I'm at KPMG, and I was like, wow, this is the professional world now. And I guess there's no such thing as potentially loving your job.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer, because you go from, the world in college. Like I only knew about like 5 jobs. There's like, you're in accounting, you were like going to be in marketing, and like try to be like the brand person at Nike. You're going to be like in investment banking, and then, or you were going to be like an artist or something, or like a doctor. Like that was it. And so there was no talk about like sales or B2B sales or anything like that in college. And so that makes sense that your dad was an accountant. I'm curious, where did you get mentally at KPMG that made you, because you were there for a few years, like that made you want to like get out and make a total left turn?
So a couple of things happened. I think, I remember, so I was on the audit side. So in accounting or Big Four, it's usually like audit, tax, or consulting. And I was on the audit side, which meant my job was to go to other companies. They had to pay for us to be there. Like they had to get audited, but they were required to do it. So they had to pay a bunch of money to have you come into their office and ask them a bunch of questions to like the executive team. And like, they don't want to be doing this. And so every single day, the part of that job that really drove me nuts was that I felt like a pest. And it was really frustrating because I was trying to do my job, but my job was actually to challenge everything they've said is true. And so I lasted about just under 3 years, and I got my CPA. I was just like, I was deep. I was going on this track.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. I was getting ready to go to the annual like training for our associates, right? And it was in Orlando, and I was in Boston Logan Airport. And I remember I called my dad. They're like boarding, and they're like, everyone's like, I missed my gate. And I remember that they called my name, and I said, Dad, I just can't get on this plane. Like, I just don't want to go. And he's like, look, you should probably just go. But then when you come back, if you're just follow your gut. And if you need to leave and do something else. And for me, that was the moment where I decided that I was out. And so I went on the trip, ended up having a good time, but I came back and I immediately started looking for other jobs. And that's how I stumbled into my sales career.
Yeah, I have a life philosophy that if something is like really digging at you in your like this gut feeling, and for me, it usually happens at like 4 a.m. And if I wake up at 4 and I've got this like sickness in my stomach, I'm like, all right, something drastic needs to change. And that's happened a few times, professionally and personally. And I feel like that's the type of moment that you had there at the airport, where it's just like everything in your body is telling you like, all right, Ryan, we need to change paths here. This is not what I want to do for the next 40 years.
Exactly. And but I look back, like I think one of the things I appreciate most about KPMG for me was learning what I'm not good at and learning what I don't want to be doing. Because then when you go into something else that turned out to be exactly what I wanted to be doing, I was so grateful. And I worked as hard as I could so I didn't have to go back to doing something I wasn't good at and I didn't like to do. And a lot of people don't get that experience. And a lot of people start their career at a place that they love and a place that is right for them. And that wasn't me, right? I worked for a great company, but not in a role that I wanted to be in. And so I always use that as my fuel to hopefully be the best so I could stay where I was, not go back.
Before we get to sales, did you, when you were in college, did you have different types of internships, or were you just, you're on the accounting path and like, that's the type of stuff you did during the summers too?
Yeah, no internships. I
Okay.
tried, I did some summer classes. I was ready to get out of college as
Yeah.
quickly as I could. And I also, since I transferred, I had to like make up some credits, but no internships and no knowledge also that like startups or sales was a thing. I knew like sales profession, but I always associated sales with like, you're probably selling a car or you're probably
Yep.
selling insurance. I never thought of sales as like a B2B sale or work at a startup and help them find product market fit. It wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah. And you, so you leave KPMG, you head to HubSpot, which is probably one of, if not the best, Boston-based startups to join. Just a great company, great leadership. From what I hear, I have never worked there, but just a great like sales foundation for building your skills. So walk me through what that experience was like heading into that world for the first time.
Yeah, so I'll take a quick step back because I left accounting and I actually took a entry-level sales job at a company called Scavenger, and that became Level Up, which then just I think it sold last year to Grubhub. And my first job was actually selling, they called them diamond dashes, where we would use scavengers, like scavenger hunt technology. We would go to a city and we would give away a diamond ring to a couple so they could propose on stage. And we would take them through a town and like they would do like all these crazy activities. And then we would sell sponsorship. So we would have like 500 couples and they would go to the wedding boutique shop or the flower store, or like we could take them anywhere through this technology. And then whoever completes the tasks fast enough or however like gets the most amount of points, they win a diamond ring. And I'll never forget it. The first time they actually wanted me to be like the MC, which I like is not a skill set of mine. I'm actually like kind of more introvert leaning, not as extroverted that requires to be like an MC for a big public event. And I was so nervous that I called off the winners in the wrong order. So I ended up giving the diamond ring to like the second or third place person, not the first. I was like, no more public emceeing. Like I need to be behind the scenes sales, one-to-one. So that was my first sales job. And then I decided to do my first startup. So I left that job after I think a year and a half-ish. And I started a company with a friend of mine called Blogger Offer. And the whole idea of Blogger Offer, it was like when daily deals, like Groupon, Living Social was hot. I was like, we're going to do daily deals for blogs, like bloggers with a massive audience. And here in Boston at the time, Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports was the biggest blog. And so we called him and we had a meeting and we sold him. And so we ended up for a year building and then selling all the deals through Barstool Sports. So it would come through his voice, but we sourced everything and we built the technology and like sourced all the inventory for the daily deals. So that was my first startup and we ran out of money very fast, about a year. Yeah. And then that's what drove me to HubSpot, where I was looking around like, what do I do next? And at the time, HubSpot was about 200 people and I had never heard of it. I didn't know anything about marketing, inbound marketing, but I got the job. And that was my first formal sales training, I would say came from HubSpot.
That's wild. Did you, it sounds like after KPMG, which I don't want to misspeak because I've never done that. But to me, when I think about accounting and that path, it feels like kind of a safe path, right? It's like you get the CPA, you have a job for life. For me also, that's not not matching my skill set. We'll call it that. And it almost feels like after that, you're like, well, I don't want to do that. Now I'm going to do just some like crazy stuff. And I'm going to, do these wedding ring scavenger hunts and start a company and join this, small tech company. Was that like, were you just kind of like out for like almost the 180, like looking for adventure, looking for like, kind of like high risk, high reward type of situations?
I think that is an accurate summary. I remember at KPMG thinking to myself, it drove me crazy that I made the same amount of money as, her name is Jen. I won't say her last name, but she was the top performer in my class at KPMG. She was so good. I made the same amount of money as her. She was working harder. She was better. She was on the harder accounts. And I was making the same. It drove me crazy. I was like, she deserves so much more. And so I wanted to find a career that I could control my own destiny, and like I could be great and I could make as much money as I deserved or I was able to bring in. And so that is what initially led me to sales, was actually seeing me as a average at best performer, making the same as a great performer. But then I do think, yeah, I swung pretty heavy the opposite direction, like high risk, turned out little reward for the first startup that failed. And then I would say HubSpot was the sweet spot, which turned out to be, very steady, very challenging, and incredibly rewarding. I ended up spending about 6 years there and saw that story from about 200 people through IPO. I think I left when they were about 2,500 people.
Wow. I want to get into HubSpot. Before we do that, what was it like to sell to Dave Portnoy? I think a lot of listeners probably know who he is at this point. He's like, they've blown up to amazing proportions the last few years.
Yeah, we went to his house and we met him, and he was he's a really good business person, and he was not cracking jokes. He was very serious. He was really nice. And he taught me how to, it's like a take a shot sale, I would call it. We had nothing. We had an idea, and we said, look, we have everything on the line here. This is our job, and we think we can do a good job. We just want you to give us a shot. And in return, we will work as hard as we possibly can. We probably can deliver for you. And 3, we gave him 1% of our company, and that turned out to be worth nothing. And but that worked, right? I mean, he was like, all right, I'll take a shot. And we did. I mean, we generated a bunch of revenue. He got a lot of it, and it wasn't enough for us to live. And then, obviously what happened with the daily deals, those kind of went bust. But yeah, it was like the first, like, someone is willing to take a chance on you. And I think I think fondly of that sale.
Yeah, I love that. What was the to get to the HubSpot days? What was the sales culture like there? Again, I as an outsider, I feel like I know a lot of people that have left companies that I'm at to go work there, or they've had a stint there. People that have been there for years and years. So I'm just curious, what's the kind of like unique sales culture like at a place like HubSpot?
Yeah, one of the things I remember, I interviewed with Mark Roberge, and he was the head of sales at the time. Now he's a professor. Yeah, total legend. And it was funny. I remember Mark saying, in the interview, he was like, let's do a role play. And I did a role play. He's like, that, no offense, wasn't that great. So let's do it again. But first, here's some coaching. Gave me the coaching, did it again. He's like, all right, you learned a lot. It was a lot better. When you come to HubSpot, you're coming for your sales MBA. And a lot of the founding team came from MIT is where they met, and they believed in it, and they had the structure, they had the playbooks, and it wasn't all figured out, but they gave you the guardrails to start. And then we refined over time. But I remember Mark saying, I asked like the cliche closing question of, do you have any concerns that would stop you from hiring me? And he did say, he's like, my one concern is, he said, I think you will leave to start a company. So I don't know what teed him off, or like what made him see that. But I ended up staying 6 years, so it didn't happen then. But obviously, it eventually did happen. So he saw that entrepreneurial spirit in the interview. But I think what made HubSpot so great was the process they had in place.
Yeah. What you're there for 6 years, got a bunch of different promotions, climbed through the company. I'm curious, like as a salesperson and then as a sales leader, what was kind of like your style and what helped you succeed outside of everyone else?
Yeah, I think early days, HubSpot's product was definitely not the best. It was definitely not best in class. And however, we had the leads. So I learned, number one, follow the leads, because we had the first shot at the business usually. And then someone would go check out Pardot or Marketo or Acton or Sprout Social, or there's a bunch at the time. And so we had the lead first, but we had a product that probably couldn't beat the other competitors. And so we had to learn how to sell based on outcomes versus like demo. Like check out this landing page builder. I don't really want to show them that because it won't look as good as it will for our competitors, but the outcome we can deliver. And the outcome was generate traffic first, convert leads, nurture leads into customers. And I think the magic sauce was, from a sales perspective, we could just explain to them what they were already going through. Meaning, we're on the phone with a prospect. Usually it was like for us, I was running the SMB segment. And so we were talking to sub 25-person companies. And it was usually the founder. And we would say, look, you found us. How did you find us? And the person was like, well, I Googled something and then I found a blog post. I was like, well, then what happened? Like, well, then I saw a button to like download an ebook. Like, great. Then what happened? Like, well, then I got some emails from you. I was like, right. And now you're talking to a salesperson. This is inbound marketing. Like, do you want to do the same thing for your community, for your prospects that you haven't yet met? It was brilliant of being able to demonstrate that the product worked based on what they were going through. And it was that moment of like, they were just like, oh my gosh, I am talking to a salesperson. I am probably about to buy something, all because found the traffic, converted, nurtured.
I love it. Yeah, that's a very unique spot to be in, where you could be like, yeah, the way that we got this meeting, that's literally what we're going to be doing for, you and your whole team. So you joined when there were about 200 people. You left post IPO. You said what, like 2,500 people. There's some folks that are listening that are also on, rocket ships at some point in their journey, that might go through something similar. I feel like that is happening right now where I'm at Gong. And just in the 9 months I've been there, the growth has been crazy. And it just feels like it's a new company every quarter. And I can only imagine for the people that have been there since day one. What tips do you have for being someone that can evolve and adapt from, a scrappy startup to, at that point, one of the fastest growing, software companies of its time?
I think I think of starting my sales career at HubSpot. I did some things before, but I think I actually really started my profession there. And looking back, it all came down to the at-bats, meaning we had so many leads, so many bad leads, but so many people to talk to. And we just had the most amount of conversations. And I got really, really good at hearing no. And hearing no is not fun, of course, right? We want to hear yes, but when you have so many leads, or when you have the opportunity to talk to so many people, if you're convincing people to spend more time with you, you fail. And I think that was the aha moment for me, like from a scrappiness perspective, which is, it's actually my job to bucket people in two buckets. Like the first bucket is, are you actively evaluating us? And if you're actively evaluating us, let's talk about that. Or are you actively trying to buy? And this came from one of my earliest sales managers. And he said, like, if you know the buyers, like, you're really good at helping people buy. Don't try to make people buy that are still evaluating, because those people will keep taking calls with you, which I never understood why, but they will. So if you get really good at convincing people to spend time with you, you're going to spend all of your time talking with non-buyers. But if you can bifurcate that and truly understand the buy bucket versus the evaluation bucket, you can then react accordingly. And talking to people who are still in an evaluation, it is perfectly fine that they do not buy. It is not okay if they don't tell you that they're not going to buy. Like, it's your job to find out. And so we would seek the no, and politely, not really going negative, just more genuinely, like, I'm trying to understand if this is real for you or if it's a good fit. Because if it's not, like, I want you to not waste your time. I want to send you wherever you should go. Maybe I'll have a recommendation, but I also want to prioritize my time. And so just having the amount of repetitions allowed us to refine again and really learn how to navigate the no's somewhere else, and like back into like the marketing team so they can nurture, and sales resources got to focus on people who were actively considering buying or actively considering a competitor. And I think in sales, we think of all of our opportunities as so precious, where we have to do everything in our power to get them to buy. But look at your close rate. Like, the average opportunity to close rate is like 20, 25%. Right? So 75% of people are not going to buy. Right? So if you really spend more energy thinking about how do I get better at no's versus how do I get everyone to a yes, like that was the magical moment for us. And I think the best reps at HubSpot were the ones that were truly best at qualification, not the ones who gave best demo.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a trap, an easy trap to fall into, especially early in your sales career. If you're ambitious, you want to hit your goals, you want to exceed your goals, you just think, hey, if I can just get back on the phone with him or her, like this is going to be the one. And it's like the 9th demo and you're not going anywhere. And I've heard John Barrows say, like, you know, the best answer in sales is yes, and the second best is no. Right. And so you want to get to one of those answers as quickly as possible to really vet it out. And again, like you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your own time. So I think as we're all kind of like, you know, gearing towards Q4, getting close to that this year, it's a good time to keep that top of mind, that you're making sure you're spending your time in the right places.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Get great at the nose.
All right. So you crushed it at HubSpot, went through the IPO, went to InVision. You were leading sales over there. And then at some point, you know, Roberge wasn't exactly right that you left HubSpot to do it, but he wasn't too far off. So talk to me a little bit about the inception of Vendr, how that came into your mind and how you made it happen.
Yeah, so I left HubSpot and I went to InVision to run their enterprise sales team. And InVision had a really strong freemium motion and a pretty low average contract value at the time, but they had the opportunity to sell to the Fortune 500. And I was really excited to do that because I was running the SMB team at HubSpot and I'd never sold enterprise ever. And I took the job, or I got the job. For me, it was because I got to do something new. But I still had something, like when I left HubSpot, there was something in my gut being like, I don't know if I really am striving to be a CRO. It was never my goal. I respected the CROs I worked for, like the Mark Roberge and Hunter, who came in afterwards, and just truly respected them. I didn't want their job though. I wasn't working to be the CRO. And so I reflected on that and I realized that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I had tried it in the past and I tried a bunch of side hustles. I could go on for days about those and they never worked. And they never worked usually because I wasn't able to build it myself. So I couldn't control the velocity. And I decided to start Vendr. I said, one, it's got to be something I'm incredibly passionate about. Two, I've got to be able to do all of it at first on my own. And so on the passion side, what drove me nuts with sales, and I'm guessing a lot of your listeners can attest to this, and I'm sure you can, is the inefficiency of it, right? Like it would take me like 90 days to close a deal. And then again, right, 80% of them, 75% of them don't close. So what do? We create more noise. We send more emails, we make more cold calls, we hire more marketers, we spend more on marketing, we create more noise because we have an inefficient motion. And so I thought I could either build a sales efficiency tool, but I think that is for the most part a solved problem. There are amazing sales efficiency tools like Gong, right? Like HubSpot, like SalesLoft, like Drift. There are so many great ones. I didn't think I'd be able to do it better than those. So what I decided to do instead is just change how people buy. And if I can change how people buy, I can then craft the perfect sales experience, starting with the customer and then ending with the salesperson. So that was number one on the passion side. I wanted to fix sales. Mm-hmm. Number two, I wanted to be able to do it all on my own at first, meaning I was the product. And the first couple accounts that I earned when I left InVision, they were my first customer. They were kind enough as I was leaving to say, you should sell to us. You should, like, we believe in you. And if you think we have this problem, we will be your first customer. And they are a customer to this day. And customer number two was HubSpot, right? So I went back to my alma maters and they were willing to give me a shot. And because of that, I had two marquee customers on day one, and I was able to be the product where I would just buy all of their SaaS for them. And when someone at HubSpot or someone at InVision wanted a category and they didn't yet know the product, I could help. Or if they already knew the product they wanted, I could help. And so I would give them time back in the day so they could focus on, building teams, building processes, building products, not figuring out procurement. And I could save the company a bunch of money because, as we know, I mean, sales for the most part, or SaaS sales, it is negotiable. And so on our side, I just wanted to find like, where's the fair price so that both sides are pumped up, right? Because they're entering a partnership. And the last thing you want to enter a partnership is the lack of trust or feeling like you didn't get the fair price. And I don't think either side wants that, because it enters the partnership with the wrong mindset. And so the goal initially was help people just get the right software at a fair price without having to pick up the phone, right? We'll do it for them. So that's how the idea started. And we've now been doing that for the past 3 years.
So I'm curious, just going back to your mindset, right? Like you've been in sales at that point, in sales leadership for almost a decade, probably like 7-8 years between HubSpot and InVision. I have to imagine making great money. Have to imagine like had some HubSpot stock, like things are going well for you in your career. Was it a big decision? Were you hesitant at all to like not throw that away, but to push that aside to start your own journey that, you're kind of walking into the unknown?
I definitely was, but I was also confident in my ability to sell. And if you can sell, you're going to be able to find a way to make money. And so early days, I ended up, I closed InVision, was our first customer. That was day one. And so I had money in the bank and I could live. Day two, it was about 3 months later is when HubSpot became a customer. But I supplemented, I sold, I was a sales consultant for a couple of different companies and charging like $5,000 a month and helping sales teams train their enterprise reps, for example. And that was really valuable at first. But what I quickly realized is that is also a trap, because that is what I know. I can make more money, probably more money than I was making in my sales jobs doing that, but that's going to quickly consume all of my time. And so after those engagements, they were about 6 months long, I decided no more, and just focused on building the business. And but within 9 months, I was making the same that I left. And for me, that was the point where it was my goal was to do it within a year. So I knew that I was onto something. And at that moment is when I started hiring our first team members.
That's amazing. I'm curious, like in the future state of sales, right? I think all salespeople can relate to that friction that you talked about, right? You've got them in your forecast, right? For, the end of the year. That's 6 weeks away. They might be just like stalling out, waiting so you get the best price. And then either you don't discount and they feel kind of robbed, or you give up too much and then you kind of feel robbed. And you can sometimes start the relationship, which should be a multi-year, long-term partnership together on rocky footing. And so I'm curious, in the vendor world, in the perfect world for you, like when do you step in and like how does that even work? Let's just say I'm going and I'm selling to XYZ company. Like when do you come in and maybe familiarize us with like how that works?
Yeah, so there's a challenge here. The challenge is that companies are not good at buying software. And I think the reason for that is because software is built for the user or the department head or like the engineer, the salesperson, the support person, the marketer. And it's not their job to be great at buying. And so what they usually do is enter into sales processes. Like they convert on a landing page, start having sales conversations, but they haven't even told the finance team or the security team or the legal team. And so you end up from the sales side, you're like, wow, I've got a deal almost at the finish line. But unfortunately, you don't, because that person didn't do the things that the company requires. And so the problem that we occasionally have is that we're looped in last minute, where it feels to the salesperson like it was like a bait and switch, where all of a sudden like vendors here to like act as procurement and to like use urgency tactics and all this stuff. And I know as a salesperson, I would hate that. Like that would be like the worst thing in my sales if I were surprised last minute. because I'm trying to hit my quota. Like I'm trying to get this deal in, and the person I was previously talking to thought that it could come in on time. And now I'm talking to this brand new party, feels like we're starting from scratch. So the reason that happens, I believe, is because of the problem of the complexities of buying SaaS. And now companies can't just buy things. Like you need to verify that someone has like their SOC 2 certification. You need to verify like that the DPA is aligned. Like that is like legal work that requires a lot of thought and a lot of time. So where we attempt to get in is as early as possible, right? And ideally, if I could say like, Tom, look, we actually have a customer that is the perfect fit for you. Like, here it is. And by the way, we've already gotten everything approved. We've got finance, budget, legal, security, all tied up. On your side, we just need a fair price. And if you can deliver that, like you've got a deal, and it literally can sign in 30 minutes. Like in that world, you are literally like giving me a high five. In the former world, you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, I want to fight. Like, I want to fight this and try to prove that I'm a better negotiator. And the thing that I find so interesting is that from the outside, looking into Vendr, people assume that like we think we're the best negotiators. We think that that we're incredibly passionate about like fixing all of procurement, but we're not. Like, I actually don't think SaaS should be negotiable. I think it should be variable, right? Because a small company coming out of YC buying Gong is worth something different to Gong versus a Fortune 100 bank buying Gong, right? I fully understand and believe in variability in pricing. What we don't believe in is the opaqueness associated with it. And so if you can shine a light on the variables and empower your customer to maximize the price, right, in their favor, like that's where we win, right? And that's what we're trying to do. And I think to get there, it does require getting in the middle of the transaction because companies need the help. Companies don't have the time, energy, or desire to train every single department head to be an expert buyer. Like, nor should they have to, right? But they have to because of how SaaS has evolved, right? It's hard to buy SaaS. And so like having the benefit of the doubt for us is always appreciated. Like when salespeople give us the benefit of the doubt that we actually are trying to help, even if it looks like we're not, right? Because we really are, right? And it doesn't always play out like that, but that's what I'm incredibly passionate about is like, and I'm getting worked up because I really want to fix sales. I don't want to be the best negotiators in the world. I don't want to have to be the best negotiators in the world.
I can speak from firsthand experience of working with the Vendr team that it is a good experience. It actually, and this leads to my next question is what I think is so interesting is that the party that you're working with on the terms actually has no skin in the game. Like he or she at Vendr doesn't, like they care about getting the deal done, right? They care about the deal getting done in a fair way for both parties. But from what I understand, like there's no, for the people that you're working with there aren't like commissioned reps to get deals done and things like that. They're there. And, that's what they say to me is like, hey, I'm just here as like a mutual third party. Like I'm trying to help accelerate this and make it easier for you and easier for the buyer. And what I've heard is that, that is kind of like a cool middle ground for people that love sales, love customer interactions, love problem solving, but maybe don't love the quota game. And as a lot of more SaaS companies, I feel from what I hear and what I see are moving from quarterly to monthly quotas and harsher penalties and things like that. It offers that like kind of like interesting new type of like kind of sales-ish role without that extreme pressure. But would you say that's fair, or am I speaking out of turn?
I think that is fair. We have an incredibly talented team. We call it our buyer team, and a lot of them are former SaaS salespeople who were top performers. And for one reason or another, a lot of the reasons you just mentioned, they decided what we say internally is like retire the quota. They're like, I love sales. I don't love the quota. I don't love the monthly grind of starting at zero. Some people love it, and some people that will want to always do that. What we found is a lot of people are ready for the next challenge, and flipping sides is fascinating, right? Like I remember I was our first buyer. I was a buyer for over a year, and the amount of transactions that I personally did with the amount of different SaaS companies, like the interactions with salespeople, it teaches you so much. Like you learn how each and every other sales org is operating. Like you learn their sales tactics, you learn their sales style, you learn the ones who are truly customer centric and the others who are truly like revenue centric. Like you witness it firsthand. And like we are in the camp that the vast majority of companies want to be customer centric, like the benefit of the doubt that they want to be. They just don't yet know how to when it comes to the final stage, like the 1 yard line of closing business, right? And so our buyer team also plays this interesting role as they evolve, as helping companies like get the right SaaS. Because as our customer base gets bigger and bigger, our customers ask us, well, what should we be using? And we are impartial, right? But we have a lot of data. So we understand like trends and momentum, and you name a competitive situation, we can just show you what other people have selected. And not only that, why, right? And their sentiment. Like if you decided to purchase a tool, what happened then, right? It's not just about like the review of when you've made the decision, it's then what happens throughout the life of that partnership. Because if you stay for 10 years, that says a lot about it. If you buy something and then churned after 1 year, that also says a lot about it. And so I think that's how our buyer team evolves over time, is really helping companies make strategic decisions with their stack, because software has become like one of the biggest points of leverage for companies. Like that's why people are buying Gong, is it makes them stronger. They're growing faster. They're retaining better because of the power of your software. Like that's happening throughout the entire landscape. So making those decisions is incredibly important.
I couldn't agree more. And I appreciate the free plug for Gong there. I want to, as we're getting close to the end, I want to hit you with a couple rapid fires here for the last few minutes, if that's cool with you.
Let's do it.
Okay. So first, we're big learners on this podcast. What's a book that's either heavily impacted your life, your career, any topic is fair game, whether it's, sales, business, fiction, whatever it might be.
I'll give you a couple quick hits. I would say on the business side, Never Split the Difference. It's one of the reasons I started the company. I know you've had Chris Voss on the show. Number two, I would say a person to follow in that case would be Sarah Tavel from Benchmark. She's got great content, like Hierarchy of Marketplaces is content that really resonates with me. In fiction, I would say The Alchemist.
So good. Quick side note, I love The Alchemist also. I just read another Paulo Coelho book called The Archer, while I was on vacation 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but get it. You'll like it.
How does it compare?
I mean, The Alchemist is like all time great. The Archer is like, it's the story of like the world's greatest archer. And he's like passing lessons on to this like young man that works for him. And, obviously all of the little lessons are applicable to really any craft that you're trying to develop. And comparing like the bow and the arrow to different things in life. It's short, it's quick. And I found it super inspirational.
Love it. I'll check it out.
Okay. Next up, what's going on your Spotify right now? What music are you listening to?
Oh, good question. I'm doing some covers. I'm just pulling it up. Angel from Montgomery right now. That's what I've got going on. But I'm an old soul when it comes to music. I'm a very big Bob Dylan fan.
Okay.
Visions of Johanna is my number one.
Okay. Respect. Any like podcasts, YouTube shows, people you follow on LinkedIn or anyone like that you recommend in like the business world that you follow?
I've got a podcast hack where I think of a person or a company that I want to learn more about, and I search for that company name plus podcast, And then I find a bunch of different podcasts that I had never heard of. I would say one, professionally for me is Invest Like the Best. I'm a really big fan of that one. And they also do this thing called Business Breakdown, which is really cool. They do like a deep dive on like Costco. That one's fascinating to listen to.
I love it. Is there anyone that comes to mind that you've recently Google searched for that you want to learn more about, like as a person or a business?
Yeah, I would say the most recent was I looked up Klarna. Fascinated by that space, just watching all the players in the buy now, pay later space.
Oh, okay.
Klarna was, I think, a Swedish company. They're the biggest in the space, but I went on a deep rabbit hole this past week on Klarna.
I love it. All right. You mentioned earlier you're a Cleveland Browns fan, for better or for worse. How many wins are the Browns picking up this year?
We're definitely going to make the playoffs. Got a top 5 defense. We're going to post 12 wins.
All right. You heard it here first. I don't know when the last time, if they've ever won 12 games before, but well, I'm rooting for you. Last thing, anything that we didn't touch on, favorite quotes, favorite kind of thoughts as we head off, that, you might think are inspiring to someone that's listening to this podcast?
I'll give you one from Y Combinator. Opportunity is abundant. It came from Ali Rogani. He's the head of their one of the heads of their growth fund, and the mindset of trust that more opportunity will continue to be present in the future at a company puts you in the right mindset of just focusing on the core job today and not worrying about the next job. If you have an abundant mindset, not a scarce mindset, it'll help you stay focused and stay the best. And then you will end up getting all of the opportunities that you deserve and are ready for when the time is right. And I'd say the second one is from HubSpot, just having been at a company that was it was a rocket ship. There were a ton of new things to do. And I felt like every single year I got to take on more opportunity because the company was doing so well. So I think there's a lot to say with the growth of a company will lead to those future opportunities.
I love it. I fucking love the abundance mindset too. I love it. My actual last question for you, who do you know that a friend of yours, someone you look up to, admire, that needs to come on this podcast? Jeff
Epstein. He's on our board. He's the independent seat on our board, former CFO at Oracle, operating partner at Bessemer. He is the world's best mentor and an advisor. Since we have salespeople on the call, last year I think he was attributed to like 10 to 15% of our revenue. He's an absolute beast.
Wow. All right, Jeff, we're coming for you. Ryan, appreciate you coming on. For anyone that wants to connect with you or learn more about Vendr, what's the best place to do, if it's LinkedIn or your site, or what's the best way?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn, Ryan New, or shoot me a note, ryan@vendr.com.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Awesome, Tom. Thanks for having me.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for checking out that podcast. Happy July to you. Would love if you took 22 seconds and hit subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, your favorite podcast player. And be sure to check out some of my content on LinkedIn. I'm Tom Alemo. And on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Tommy Tahoe. Have a great day. Make it legendary. Peace.